Hey, hi Harsha.
Hey, how's it going?
Going good. Very good evening.
Yeah. How's the hackathon been going for everyone so far?
Going good. Just hold on for 2 more minutes till then participants are joining. So I'm just on moderation. Haha.
Am I audible to you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Harsha, for joining the session. So yeah, Nandini, you can start.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, you guys, in terms of stuff. So yeah, I think just to get started, like how many of you guys have heard of Slashy before? Yeah, I think that is not too many, I guess, in terms of stuff. But yeah, for context, Slashy, we're an AI native email client. So kind of similar to like a Gmail or an Outlook, but we're built from AI on the start. And I think what that means is not something that a lot of people fully understand. Like when you say a product's built from AI from the start. And I think that's because a lot of people, when they build AI products, you kind of start from just doing an action or a result in a sense, right? Where you're like, okay, let me say if I'm going to make an AI email, let me just go and take Gmail's API and let me go and like make drafts, let me organize or whatever, and then let me just do this, and it takes 2 or 3 days. But I think when you look at really quality products, what you do, like a Cursor, for example, right? Like how Cursor made code really good is they went and they indexed your code base so that it made it easier for AI agents to go and search your code base, do suggestions, etc. That's like something that we do as well with Slashy with emails, is that we don't just say look at your emails and then like run AI on top of it. We go and index your emails in a custom way to make it very easy for AI to process, and your calendar events as well. So like an example of that is like if I go into our settings, you get like memories that get created.
Harsha can just give a second to me. Nandini, you can just introduce Harsha and all, and also about the session. So it would be better for everyone to just go with the moment. And
Yeah,
Harsha, after that you can start the session.
awesome,
Sorry for
man.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Sorry for distribute. Actually, disturbing her. So,
All right.
I'll take a few minutes only. Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome to the today's session. As you are already aware that you are here for the build in AI for India hackathon, and it's the first day out of the 7 day of the AI online hackathon. And in the today's session, as Harsha already sort of introduced himself and what he is actually going to talk about, but let me just introduce him, actually what he does and how he actually started. So he is basically the founder and CEO of Slashy, which is one of the partners for this hackathon. And as you know that there is a mandatory thing that you should try to integrate the partners into your project. And through this meet today and through what Harsha is going to tell you, you'll be able to get how things are going to work out for you and how Slashy will be useful for you guys. So if you think Slashy will be useful for your project, most welcome. You are here to get the information, how to integrate it in your project and what exactly is Slashy. So I think you'll be having a great introduction with the whatever Slashy is. So let me just tell you how we will be actually participating this into several sections. What is the agenda of today's session? So first of all, Harsha will be introducing about his journey as he have formed a whole startup, entire startup in this age. So it's really, really inspiring. So he'll be telling you about his story and behind of the behind of the scenes of Slashy everything. And thereafter there will be a live demo or an overview of Slashy and what it does, which will be actually helpful for you so that you can understand if Slashy can help you with your project, and I hope it does. And then there is this how did Slashy get into Y Combinator, which is YCS25 as such a young stage. And then there is this biggest learnings from YC and advice for early stage founders. Because today in this Gen Z era or in this 26 era, uh, where everyone is becoming founder or startup founder, I think it will be really, really helpful for you. Uh, okay, I think the recording is not on for this session because we generally share the recording with the participants. A couple just let me know when.
Nani, it's already there, so don't worry. Yeah.
Okay, super. So I was talking about the agenda, right? So I was talking about the learnings that you'll be getting from Harsha, that how you can actually build your own startup and become a founder of your own company. And then there will be some tips for builders on shipping AI products and getting their first users. I think it's actually helpful because you just made up a whole project, but how to get users on that project is very, very impactful for you and very, very important. So that is also a very, very important part of the session. And the main thing, how can participants leverage AI tools and automation in their own products, which is the brownie or the plus point for you participants, because this is where you will be getting guidance from Harsha, how you can integrate and all the questions that you have in everything. And thereafter, we will have a Q&A. So please, I have a disclaimer for you that please and please take your questions with you, note it down in your notepad or remember it in your mind. So we can take that question answers with Harsha in the end. All right, we won't be answering it in the mid sessions. Now, uh, let me just give it out to Harsha. And sorry for interrupting you, Harsha, in between. And yeah, please, Harsha, most welcome to the stage.
Oh yeah, no problem, no problem. Yeah, thanks so much for the introduction. So yeah, I probably should have started off a little bit more with who I am. Yeah, so I'm Harsha. I'm CEO of Slashy. And yeah, we're an AI native email client. We did an accelerator program called Y Combinator last year. And yeah, we raised a seed round. And yeah, now we have definitely a good chunk of users and growth's been good, relatively speaking. Yeah, and say what got me into startups initially was I used to make a dating app in college, and yeah, that was fun. I got a bunch of users. But what we realized with the dating app was that even though we got a bunch of users, it was hard to get people to pay for stuff. And I think that's what really makes the difference between a project and a business, right? Is that can you get people to pay for your service on a recurring basis in terms of stuff? I think is like one of the things that most people just struggle with, because obviously the first thing is to get users in your product. But I think usually once you try it for at least a year or 2 years, you'll get something that gets users. But then once you get those users, how do you get them to pay? One, and then two, how do you get them to keep coming back is always a challenge for people, I think, in general, in terms of stuff. And I think that's where sometimes like solving problems like email or something that are like naturally recurring problems that have existed for a long time are very nice, because people always have been paying for them and there's a very clear market demand when it comes to that in terms of stuff. And yeah, let me think, is there something? And I can just quickly share Slashy here. Back here. And yeah, so what I was saying before too about the primitives, I think, is a common thing that people don't fully understand when it comes to email is any product. I think this is like one thing I think even with AI that most software engineering people kind of forget about. That's important is how do you define the building blocks for your product really well? So going back into it, we're doing email. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other companies that do email and that stuff. So when most of our customers sign up for our product, they're not necessarily just paying for like this UI or like all the stuff that we have and the features. They're also paying for this belief that we are handling email in a better way than they could ever vibe code themselves in terms of stuff. And I think part of that comes into how do you structure your product itself to be the best proper way. And I think that goes into what are the primitives and building blocks that you use to define stuff. So like one thing that we do that maybe other people don't necessarily do that makes our email client a little bit more accurate is if I go here, we actually store like memories per person. So if I say go into settings, you'll like go to context, you can be like, I'm not this is a demo account, but you can see here that there's like these memories per person that are helpful. And that helps a lot with the AI's context, because when you're a human, you're like looking at threads and like looking at emails, you already have these natural memories that come in. But for most AI products, you just like look at the email itself and you don't necessarily think about all these like learnings from over time that get compounded. So by adding this memory layer on top of the emails that get attached to each email, it makes the AI perform a lot better. Another thing that we do that is helpful is that we also can determine what emails need replies, what emails need follow-ups. And those all get processed again when the email arrives versus when the AI queries. Because again, it's like, right, if you just tell an AI, look at all my emails and tell me which ones need replies, it's unlikely for it to go, and even if it does, going through like 100 or 1,000 emails is a waste of a context window at that prompt time. But if you do it incrementally as the emails arrive, it's a much more accurate result, and you can still keep the speed that a user requires in terms of stuff. And I think that's really what it comes to with these AI systems and design is like, you need to have this longer term thinking that's only possible if you are working on this product for a full-time basis versus coming up with like a point solution where someone who's doing an internal tool might do it more that way in terms of stuff. Now, yeah, other parts of Slashy, obviously we have a lot of stuff in a UI, but relatively speaking, I think like the UI itself doesn't really matter too much for a hackathon in terms of things. What we do as well with Slashy is we also have a MCP, which would probably be where you guys, if you guys are going to do an email integration, be the more useful one. So I don't know how many of you guys would say heard of Agent Mail or any of them, but for example, they like use Slashy, they like MCP as well, because you can connect your Gmail to Slashy and then use our MCP. And I just, what it's worth, we have like the best email MCP currently. The reasons for that is just that we have a little bit more capabilities than other ones do. So some parts of stuff that Slashy's MCP can do in terms of stuff actually better for me probably too. So yeah, I guess there's like these prompts right here, but you can like have Slashy just like read your emails, draft replies, and it can see like follow up. You can do scheduling as well because it has access to your calendar, not just your email. And also because it connects to multiple inboxes, there's a few cool use cases. So if I actually share my screen here again, now this one is one that I do via Slashy, but you can do this also via Surfer, is that I will have a thread to your alias, have it find times. So most MCPs, inboxes, and so forth, they don't let you have multiple aliases for an account. But like, let's say you want to do, so one of some of our customers have customer service, right? Where they'll have like different support emails that they need. And what they do is they have an AI that triages the emails and picks which alias to use and send via Slashy. Which is a very common thing, right? When you're making a product where you don't want to just have the same email address for everything, but most people just have the same one because most existing platforms don't let you connect multiple email inboxes in the same way or like do multiple aliases. But I would recommend, again, it's like if you're trying to build a quality product, to when you have different functions, you shouldn't be using the same email address for all of that. And then, yeah, the other things, obviously, like just like some small stuff, like attaching files, we're the only ones who allow you to attach large files in terms of stuff. Yeah, and then outside of that, I think it's like relatively simple. The docs for the MCP I can put in here in terms of stuff. And yeah, we also allow you to track opens and that stuff. So if you ever, like when you send an email, if you want to be like, hey, like, let me know if this customer, like this client or whatever has seen this email, and if they have, do this. It's like a very easy functionality. A common one that people do is like, let me send an email to this prospect. If they open the email, give them an automated phone call with Vappy or retail or something. It's a pretty common flow. And that's the common one if you're building anything with an AI go-to-market agent or something like that. But yeah, and with the MCP, I can be like, yeah, like what inboxes do you have access to? And yeah, the other thing as well is, right, with all these emails, you can get memory, prep for calls, scrape the web, research LinkedIn as well. So yeah, if you guys are doing anything with web search, researching people, etc., this MCP will probably be better than whatever else ones you guys could be using, just because we give all the tools that our agent has just via MCP in terms of stuff. But yeah, I think that's like a decently simple overview of it in terms of things. I would be like, pretty much if you guys are using like email and calendar as part of your product, I would recommend just using an MCP because it'll make your life easier in terms of stuff. But yeah, I think that's about all I had on my side. So if anyone has any questions, happy to answer questions about Slashy, about my journey, or just about startups in general.
Yeah, thanks also for the wonderful brief about Slashy and all. Like guys, like you, whatever the question you have, you can just like put in the chat box, and Harsha would be happy to take the question.
I think I can moderate the questions answer. So Kamil has asked
Yeah.
over like what is Slashy all around, like just explain in a nutshell, quick manner.
Yeah. So what we say pretty much is Slashy is like an AI native email client that has an assistant built in that drafts emails in your tone, labels emails for you, tracks your follow-ups, and preps you for calls. But really what we're selling, and I think this is something that I know a lot of like builders who are getting started get concerned with AI is like, can't anyone copy your software? We're really just selling a service because SaaS is called software as a service. What we're selling is just the best email software for the existing AI. So like as the models get better, as capabilities change, the platform itself will constantly change on the underlying sense to get you the best experience possible with email. But you might not see it. You might be like saying the same interface, you might be seeing the same automations, but it will get exponentially better. Because right, as a user, when you pay for these products, you're not necessarily paying for a point in time. You want to pay for continuity. in that sense. And so that's really what we're selling to people in terms of stuff, is less like the features I mentioned before that anyone can copy, and more that sense and feeling and trust that we will constantly improve the product and match what's right now at the frontier when it comes to AI. Okay.
Thanks. I hope, Kamal, it answers your question. Then there's another person named Pipen. He asked all around, for the voice speech feature, is it trained on the previous emails like we will be receiving, or is it like short prompting thing like on a regular or new mail kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And following on that particular question, is it trained on the previous data, or it's like making the model effective every day? How it's working?
Yeah. So we do two things. And I think this is something that I think is really nice about our product, is that because it learns about people over time, even if it doesn't work as well the first time, people will keep using the product. I think this is a challenge a lot of AI products right now, is that if they don't work the first time, people will leave. But yeah, so what we do look at previous emails to help it get better in terms of stuff. But the thing is, no matter what, is like if I give previous emails to our AI system, there's going to be some deviation from what the AI does and what the human will eventually do. And so that's like where it's nice, is that because we now know here's what the AI expected the human to send, and you can see what the actual one sent, you can kind of compare those differences and use that to then update the prompts, update the thing, so that over time it keeps getting better and better. And it's actually, for us, it actually works a little bit better. Now, we don't intentionally do this super significantly, but we still, like, is a nice thing, is that even if we do worse at the start, but improve exponentially over the next few days, it helps with customers because you get this trust that the system is learning. Now, consider the alternative where you're like, okay, we already were at like a 95 percentile, and the next day we're at like a 98 percentile. That's less exciting than if you were at an 80 percentile, and the next day you went up to a 95 percentile in terms of stuff, because you're like, wow, this system actually learns so much about me. The more I work with it, it's just going to get better and better. While in the first case, even though it started at a baseline higher level, you don't have that same confidence that it's going to get better because you don't see as noticeable of a change.
Suish asking about, does Slashy have any patents right now, and or bought any lessons? What's your daily to-do list? Okay, so he's asking about your daily schedule as well, and Slashy does has any patents all around. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the compliment. Yeah, patents, I think, at least in software, as far as I know, there hasn't been patents that have ever worked in terms of stuff. I mean, I think especially with the AI age, it's like anything that I do, you can probably copy. I give a good amount of talks about the software, and I think if people listen to enough of them, you can probably reverse engineer a lot of what we do in terms of stuff. So yeah, I don't think there's much of a point in patents, especially with AI, because it's very hard to determine if someone's copying your actual, because they need to copy your actual source code. They can't copy the concepts for a patent to be defensible, and it's very hard to prove that in that sense. I think it's much better to, I think that's where it goes back into, if you define your product with a few core sets of principles and primitives, if people don't have those same primitives and principles, they can never copy you in a significant way to matter. So like for us, right, we have like allow multiple inbox support. One of our competitors, say like Superhuman or Gmail, I guess, or Outlook even really, none of them ever have this whole concept of multiple inboxes under one user. So they can never match our functionality when it comes to users who have multiple inboxes, just because the system wasn't built on that. And that actually allows us to have a decent amount of protection. Now, on the flip side, if someone was to start tomorrow, they would be a lot scarier than any of these big companies for us, because if you start tomorrow, you can look at everything that we've built already and just build a system that's very similar to us and be competitive. Now, the flip side, if you start tomorrow, you have to build everything we've already built and learn all the stuff we've learned. But I think that's actually, in this industry, one of the common misconceptions is that the scary people are the big players. The scary people are actually the new people, because the new people can actually build everything we have, while all the existing ones can't.
Yeah, and also share your daily schedule.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So yeah, if you guys can see in my daily schedule for today, I put just AGI, writing loops, and then looping, and I need to also get some lighting. So I need to get a better lights for my room in terms of stuff. I think this is actually something too that we do decently well. I think a lot of founders forget about is that your first 100 users, they're not customers necessarily. They're actually your friends almost, right? They're doing you a favor by using your product. Like I think most of us who've built a product before, your product's shit when you first like launch it, right? It's like not a good product. But then there's 100 people who are willing to try it out and take a chance on you. And I think a lot of founders don't do enough work in respecting that relationship in terms of stuff. Something that we try to do well is to try to become friends with our users and really help them out as well, because them using our product is an immense help for us. Like now our product is decent quality, but when we first started, it wasn't decent quality. It was pretty bad when we first launched. Like any product you launch should be bad when you first launch. Like that's the whole point of hackathons and these stuff, right? Is to push you to launch something really quickly. And to keep those users on the product, the only reason they would stay was because they felt the strong bond between us and them. They weren't my friends. I didn't know them before they signed up for the product. But within a week or two, they were like, these guys are such great people. I want them to win. So I will continue to use this product and help them make it actually be quality. And obviously then on our side, we have to repay that trust by making the product quality. But I think that's something that people underrate is there's always this stress about how do you get more users, but there's not this like public perception that you need to make sure that your users actually like love you and like care about you, because which I think should be there, because initial users are such nice people really for most products.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Shuez. Then Twinkle is asking why is your voice feature better than Google's one, and that I have incorporated in my project. So he's comparing with Google. She's comparing with Google.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like, I mean, there's like two things, right? I guess like the simple answer to this, and this is what I say on sales calls, is just like, what about Google would make you think that they would have a better voice feature than a startup in terms of stuff is like the simple answer, right? Like, as anyone knows with any big company, like they never have a high quality product. They have a product that works well, but any startup can usually outship them within a week or two. The longer answer is that it's just the iteration stuff, right? With voice or any of feature really, is that you could have a default demo that most big companies will launch, right? But it's like, let's say you're in a car, you're like maybe outside walking, and then you get like a big noise comes from like an surrounding sound, and then you're in the middle of an agent. So the agent just stops and is like, what's that noise? Right? But that wasn't like a natural noise. That was like a background noise or something. You don't really know how to fix that until a user complains about that happening. And because as a startup, you're much closer to your users, you can iterate and add those things much better in terms of stuff. And that's usually what you'll see with a lot of AI features or voice features, etc. It's not necessarily that on the top level, we're like clearly better, but it's on those like secondary and tertiary levels when it comes to reliability, consistency, we get better because the natural advantage we have as a startup is the closeness to users. So you can get that feedback and iteration loop a lot faster than like a Google or Microsoft. For them, right, every update takes a week or 2 weeks, and that exponentially kind of compounds into a higher quality product. But I think like being like, oh, we have a feature that they can't copy is usually a little bit of coping when it comes to stuff, because I think anyone can copy anyone with a feature. I think you guys all probably use AI more than I use AI even, and you guys should know this more than I do. But I think that exponential rate of improvement by learning how a customer actually uses your product is still a moat that people have who have products in market for a longer time.
I hope that answers Twinkle your question. Then I combined two questions, and I think Harsha, you should reveal what you're offering to developers here as well, because a lot of questions coming from what is for developer for Slashy. So yeah.
So right now we have an MCP. We're planning, unfortunately for this hackathon, we won't have an API out yet. We're planning to have one soon in terms of stuff. But yeah, I think the main advantages for us for an MCP is one, it's simpler to use us than other tools because we have calendar, email, web search, and people research all in one simple MCP. in terms of stuff. Another thing is that we support email tracking, so you can see if someone's opened the email, etc. 3 is that we support multiple inboxes, which I think actually for hackathons is something that people don't do enough. Is when I go to hackathons or I judge hackathons, quite often you'll see projects that use emails. They always have one address in terms of stuff, which makes very little sense because you can have different aliases, right? But if you're, for most end users, you're probably gonna have at least some variety of end users who receive these emails, and you at a minimum want to at least change the name of the inbox that you're sending an email from in terms of stuff. And it also helps the AI as well, because then you can more easily like triage and label stuff when you have like, say, emails from like Slashy EA versus Slashy customer support, etc. in terms of stuff. So I would say those are typically the main ones that people find value in. And then the other thing is that but this is one that's a little bit more qualitative. So I don't like saying this to developers as much, because developers like very quantitative stuff that's very, very provable. But then it's like when you come to drafting and like sounding like a person, people find using MCP helps the AI sound a lot more human and higher quality. So we have like a lot of founders, unicorn CEOs, etc., who use the MCP as part of the OpenClaw Hermes setup to send their emails as well, because they find it's much higher quality. Where like if you ever applied to say a YC startups job or something, you've gotten a rejection email, there's a good chance that was written by someone using our MCP or just using a platform in terms of stuff. But obviously, hopefully you guys didn't realize that. Then that would be bad for us if you have in terms of stuff. But yeah, so I would say those are the main ones. We do want to get the API access out soon, but we don't have it yet, unfortunately, in terms of stuff. So, yeah.
And what you're offering to developers there
Yeah.
for a hackathon?
Yeah, for the hackathon, I think we're giving free access to Slashy via the hackathon, and then let me know. I think you guys can. I just realized. Let me actually put the link in the chat. I think I might have given the wrong link in terms of stuff, but
the help how to write Slashy.
Yeah, let me give a link of. How do I?
I'll pin that over.
Yeah, I think there was an.
Or we can send it after the session as
well.
I
can send it after the session. Yeah. But...
So Harsha, one question from my side. Slashy known earlier as a Dash, right?
Yeah.
And can you just walk us through like entire journey? I think you're another partner, Pranjali, right? Yeah. So Pranjali is very famous over social media. So just share about that as well, his journey, and into YC as well.
So we started off as a general agent, kind of similar to an OpenClaw, Hermes, or Manus in terms of stuff. We got into YC. We won #1 product hunt of the day. We got up to 10,000 users in terms of stuff, which was really exciting, right? Like this is one of the first times getting more than 100 users on a product. But like, wow, this is great. This is gonna go to the moon. We're building $1 trillion company and everything in terms of stuff. So we raised a seed round and we called about 200 of our users. And again, I think if you're building a product and you don't talk to your users for at least 2 to 3 hours a day, I think that's really bad. I talk to my users about 6 to 8 hours a day right now in terms of stuff. And I think it's helpful now because I have a team. So like I talk to users, I tell them what to do. Obviously, when you're like building everything yourself, I think 2 to 3 hours is more reasonable. But yeah, we called 200 of them and they all were telling us they loved the product, which was really bad. Because like I was saying earlier in the talk was that you want to build businesses where people are recurringly giving you money. And we saw all these users we called were paying users of the product, but they kept using it less and less. But they said that they loved the product, which was really bad. Because if they found no problems in the product and they were paying for it, but they kept using us less, that means at some point they would churn because you can't really reverse decline in usage, right? Like if there's no reason to. And the reason that they were using us less and less was like, you guys have the best agent out there. Anytime Claude or ChatGPT fails, I go and use you guys. So in their heads, they didn't even realize they were using us less. But because Claude and ChatGPT were getting better, they just naturally were coming to Slashy less and less over time. In terms of stuff. And this is where it was like a really hard decision for us, right? Because we would pretty much, anytime you pivot, you're starting from zero again. But I think, again, it's like when you're taking money from an investor, from venture capital, your duty isn't to go and make, say, $1 million or like a very small amount, even though that's a lot of money, it's still like a small outcome for them. Your goal is to build like the next Apple or the next Microsoft. And it was like very clear at that point is if this is the usage pattern we have with users, I couldn't, in the next 5 years, could I see these existing users still using a product? And it was very hard to see that. And so with that, we pivoted into email. And the reason we chose email was just because it's one of those things that everyone checks every day. And you don't really like, you kind of just check your email client before you go to an AI product like ChatGPT or Claude. So we figured the usage would be something that if we could make a really good one, you would just own usage that would only increase over time, not decrease in terms of stuff. But then that was hard, of course, because to build a good product in like the email space, you do need like 3 to 6 months of just a really shit product in terms of stuff. So going from 10,000 users to 0 is like a very big jump in terms of stuff. But yeah, we spent some time building it out, got some validation from the market, and then we've launched now, and it's been pretty good now. And like I would say, like now, like our revenue is already almost double of what we had at the peak with 10,000 users, and we have much less than 10,000 users as well now in terms of stuff. And so it's like overall, yeah, have no regrets on it, but I would say it's definitely been hard decisions. But I think it's always about, and I think this is something that I always get reminded about, is like if your goal is to build a generational company, you need to have the bar for metrics and execution be at that 99.9% level. And anytime you don't hit that bar, you have to be honest with yourself and honest with the company about that and figure out how do I go and hit that in terms of stuff. And anything else like feelings, emotions, etc. shouldn't matter, because I mean, if you just look at the best founders in the past as well, like that's how they operate. They operate very ruthlessly and without any care for anything except that 99.9 percentile like execution.
Right. And when did you change from Dash to Slashy? Like which
Oh,
year?
yeah. So I forgot about that. Yeah, we changed in the summer of last year. That wasn't something intentional. We just got a lawsuit from Dropbox because they have a product called Dropbox Dash. Our company was called Dash, and they were like, "You guys are violating our trademark." And I think this is a quote that one of my friends have always said to me, and I think it's true, is that lawsuits only matter if someone has the money to actually sue you in court. That's the only time it matters. And Dropbox had a lot more money than we do, so we changed our name because we wouldn't have won any like lawsuit or anything.
Got it. I think a lot of questions goes with how to integrate, where to integrate. So, Harsha, like, can you just make it for everyone with the sector specific or sector agnostic, like how they can integrate Slashy in their product and how they can like make Slashy out of it best use case with their projects?
Yeah. So what I would do, so yeah, we have an MCP support, and how I would do it would just be to give this link to Claude. I'll put it in the chat and just be like, hey, Codex. I imagine, I guess, as anyone, man, I think all of you guys use AI to code at this point, right? It's probably a fair statement to say. Yeah, so I'll just tell it to be like, hey, can you look at this and integrate it to MCP within my app? Is pretty much what I would do. And it should work pretty well if you just point it here. We use MCP. We have remote OAuth support and that stuff. I could break down everything for you guys, but I think if you guys are using AI anyways to do it, I think this is like the simpler way. If you just ask it, the doc should have everything. But yeah, if you guys do still have questions as well as you guys are building stuff, my number is here, and you can WhatsApp me. Yeah, just I think WhatsApp is probably the best way to contact in terms of stuff. And otherwise, if you guys prefer email, this is my email as well, and you guys can contact me either way there. And I'm happy to troubleshoot anything as you guys are building it, as I imagine that there probably is there's some edge case that you guys might have as you guys are building the actual product. So happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks Harsha for sharing your contact. So anybody from Builder they are facing real issues and getting real problems. So you can directly reach to Harsha directly and solve your problems as well, and understand how everything works. Um, so, Suyash, okay, just a second. Suyash, which on which platform Slashy's AI infrastructure hosted and managed?
Yeah, so we actually have a mix for AI. We use Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, and then we also use like a few open source and open like Fireworks and a few others to host open source models. This goes into my earlier point of the whole reason someone pays for us is that they know that we'll do all the AI work for them. And I think, yeah, it's just each of the models have different things they're good at when it comes to price, efficiency, quality, etc. Where it makes very little sense to pick one vendor for any serious product in that sense. Now, again, if it's like a hackathon or something, I wouldn't recommend doing all the vendors we have because you guys have better stuff to do with your time than to go and like try 50 different models. But yeah, so we use those. And then for core infrastructure, we use AWS for hosting and we have Superbase for our backend. We keep it simple, relatively speaking. Nothing too complicated and that pretty standard for an AI startup.
Yeah, I hope that answers Suresh your question. Then a advice for all builders or all builders here, like how they can get on YC at such a young age, like you did, and a generic advice. What does it take to like get into the YC standard? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the biggest thing that I think people need to remember, right, is one is that building a successful startup is like a top 1% outcome in terms of things. It's not like easy. Like even if you get into YC, most people fail. There's another thing is that right when people are going into YC, what YC looks for is a few traits. One is just general intelligence. But that's like a little bit always unfair, right? But it's like a lot of like background, right? Like have you built something successful before? Have you worked at an elite company? Have you gone to an elite university, etc.? Are the things that they might look at. Now, if you haven't done those, that's fine, but it's just one thing they do look at. So that's why you might see someone who say goes to an IIT who might have done nothing before, who might get into YC because they're like, oh, they went to an elite university, they go in. Whether or not those are good signals isn't something I'm trying to debate. It's just a fact that they look at that in terms of stuff. The next thing is, do these guys have the drive and hunger to be a founder? That's something most people can control, right? This is like, have you gotten traction? When you do stuff, does it look like something that you guys like? Does it look like you guys are starving for this company, or does it look like you're doing this as a side project? I think this is one of the things that a lot of founders don't understand. Like, what does starvation look like when you're building a company? And I think it's like, right, like if I were to say that the company is going to shut down next week if you don't get, say, 60 customer interviews, right? Like, what would you do? You would probably call everyone you know. You would go and do a bunch of emails. You would pretty much do a lot of different stuff, right? But then the question is that, like, why is that not something that you're doing right now? Right? Like, why is it that I need to tell you that your company is going to shut down next week for you to do this? Because any week that your company is not growing at whatever growth number you set, 10, 20, 30%, that's a week that you're failing anyways. And that's a week that's causing your company to die. So the best quality founders will treat every week like the company is going to die. And they will work at that rate in terms of stuff. And I think that's like one of the biggest weaknesses I see with a lot of founders who apply to YC and those things, especially if you don't come from backgrounds like an IIT or working at a Google or something that where like YC might let you in without this, is that you don't clearly show that like starvation mindset that I think is needed for a founder, especially if you're not successful, right? Because if you want to be successful and you want your company to succeed, like you should be doing everything you can to make it work out and make it succeed in terms of stuff. And I think a lot of people do think they do that, but it's like the bar for themselves is just too low almost in terms of sense. Like, and I think that if they were really, if you ask your friends, they can also tell you like, is your bar like low or not, especially if they're in this space. But I would say most people I've met very few people, even in YC, I would be like, not that many people who actually hit the bar, in my opinion, for like that true starvation mindset. And then, and then number 3 is just building in a space that has clear potential to grow. Right? Like if you're building in a space like, say, importing Italian shoes to, say, like India or something, right? Like, actually, I guess that's a big market, but there's markets that are just much smaller than $1 billion or $10 billion. I think actually now I see is like $10 billion or $100 billion markets are like the minimum. So it's just like, if you're building in a very niche space that doesn't have clear growth to become like the $1 billion, $10 billion outcome YC needs, then that's always going to be hard in terms of stuff. But I think relatively speaking, any idea that works for even a US market should work for an Indian market at this point. I don't think the Indian market is like that small anymore. It's like pretty massive market. And I think YC is pretty open to companies that work in the Indian market compared to before. Obviously, it's still easier applying from America than applying from India, but I think it's like the last few years, YC has just been increasing how many more people they get from India into the batches and stuff. Yeah.
100% agreed, Harsha. Yeah. So any participant who have any questions, so you can mute yourself as well and ask directly with Harsha. We are here more 6 more minutes. After that, 8:20 we'll wrap up. I have one question. Start building Slashy. Okay. So Karthike asking if you have to rework again and building Slashy from zero, what mistakes you avoid basically, and what you will do from building from initial. Yeah. That's a really great question.
Yeah, I think like one is, I think all the mistakes I make, I would like be okay with making them again. I have no regrets on that sense. But I think that's anytime, right, as a founder, just like if you're a first time founder or you haven't built the company to the size before, you're just gonna make mistakes that happen. But I think, like the ones that I would do, and this is something I got advice from actually a YC partner as well, was like when we were building out the initial version of the email client, was like you should talk to as many people as possible about how they do email workflows, because everyone does it so uniquely. And I think this is when you're selling a product to a non-similar set of people, right? Because there's so many different people who use email. You might have startup founders, record labels, like a cashier at a store, etc. They all have different email problems. Is that you need to kind of remove your ego from building the product to understand that how I perceive the world and how I use email is not how a majority of my users will do it, because they all will have different ways. And the best way to figure out then how do I best solve the needs of all these various people isn't for me to sit in my room and build out a product. It is for me to go and talk to these people and see how they think about email and they work on stuff. And this is something that we did do and we've like learned over time as we work with more and more users. But I think that's always just something that I always like think is like, I think it's like one of the easiest pieces of advice that everyone gets. And I've gotten it 100 times in my time as doing a startup. So I imagine you guys have gotten it 100 times. I think it's always something that people never do enough, is talking to end users and really putting yourself in their shoes. Because I mean, I think like the most ideal world is that you can get to the point where you can just like sit in your room and pretend to be any one of your users and just live as them for like the next 24 hours. In terms of stuff is like, I think like the goal a founder should get to. I wouldn't say I'm at that level yet in terms of stuff for sure, but I think I'm a lot closer to that now than I was from the start. Yeah.
One technical question. Do you provide REST API, SDK, or MCP server for developers? Can we invoke Slashy workflow directly into their React Firebase applications? Can Slashy execute multiple actions in one workflow?
Yeah, so Slashy can execute multiple actions in one workflow. And then, you can just, we have an MCP server that you can invoke directly from your React Firebase application in terms of stuff. I would just point the coding agent that you use to a doc site and it should be able to help in terms of stuff. But if it doesn't work well, I put my number in my email. I'm happy to also, debug it, figure that out too as well after the call in terms of stuff. We just send more details if that's not working.
Yeah. One suggestion: when I am building AI product for high trust domains like healthcare, what creates a user trust factor, better AI accuracy, explain, and seamless workflow integration?
Yeah, I think this depends on how you're selling the product, right? I think people forget that when someone gets to your product, it's from some sales point, right? Like, let's say I'm going on to, say, Discord, right? I always come to Discord from a gaming perspective. when I come to Slack, I'm always coming from a work perspective. So my user, I actually have different experiences with almost similar platforms just because of how I perceive it. So if you're building an AI product for a high trust domain like healthcare, it's like, how is this working? Like if this is a system that's meant to work in the background where no one touches, then you want it to just be very accurate and be seamless to add or whatever. It doesn't need to be seamless because it can have a setup cost, but it has to work and doesn't need to be explainable. But if you're doing something where you're working with a doctor, right? Doctors' time is very valuable. They're not going to want to switch much. They're not really good at learning new tech. And they also think that they're better than AI. So that means you need to make an AI that's explainable, easy to use, and doesn't make a doctor feel like they're going to lose their job to AI in terms of stuff. And so I think that's like how you got to do it too, is I think, and that's what goes back into that thing about talking to customers, is that products are also a byproduct. Like the way someone uses your product is a byproduct of how they get onto your product in the first place. Humans are really, all of us are just really stupid people. And we don't really think about using stuff much different than whatever it's told to us, right? Like if you look at how most people use ChatGPT, it's like just to ask questions, because that's how they were told ChatGPT works, is that it's a chatbot that you ask questions and it'll answer it for you. Like most people don't even like really, they still struggle with using it for coding, even though a lot of us have seen how valuable it is for coding. Like most people who use these products don't, and it's the same for any product. It's just whatever you tell them on how to use it is probably how they would use it in terms of stuff. So that sales cycle, I think, is the more important part that gets into the product.
Hope that answers your question, Aditya. Harsha, any last words for builder out here? We have so many, like 250 shortlisted teams. So just share your last words.
Yeah, I think like, right, this is a week-long competition, which I think is already like pretty insane that you guys are doing it for a week in terms of stuff. I'd actually never did a hackathon, and I applied to one hackathon in college and I got rejected. So I never did one again because I was like, oh, these are too hard to get into. So I'm very, very jealous that you guys are doing it. And I think this is one of the benefits of when you're not running a startup, is that you're able to go and try all this cool tech out and really push stuff to the limits. Like all of you guys are probably way smarter at AI than I am at this point, because I've just not had the chance to play around with AI tools as much as you guys have. And I think that's something that people always underrate, is how close to the frontier you are when you are a builder, a tinkerer, or like a hackathon at a hackathon. And I think that like sometimes you think, oh, just because everyone at this hackathon knows how to use these agents or run these loops or whatever, that they are like whatever your idea is silly and stupid. What I've realized is actually that most people are much stupider than you think when it comes to these stuff in terms of things. And I would be like, anytime you think your idea is simple or like not super complicated or not super cool, I would challenge you to go and talk to 10 people outside of this hackathon who might use your product and see what they think. And my guess is that they will actually think it's quite cool or quite interesting. And I think that's the problem, is a lot of people end up relying on like other builders or developers who are like, oh, everything's easy, right? As developers, we're always like, we can build that, or like that's easy. And a lot of promising ideas get shut down too early almost, because they don't realize actually how cool or how useful this tech is, just because another programmer is like, oh, I can build that in like 8 hours. But yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Harsha, for like wonderful connecting today and like answering all the queries out here and connecting with builders. Thank you, Harsha, for your time, and yeah, looking forward to see you in hackathon in the judge time. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it was great talking to you guys all, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Harsha.
Yeah, we can make the final announcement, right?
Yeah.
Kapil, if you can showcase the LinkedIn post.
Just a minute.
I have with me right now. Is my screen visible to you guys? So these are the participants. We like the post very much, and we would appreciate if you can post with this session as well by sharing your learnings and your overall experience with this session by tagging Harsha and Slashy and Built-in AI. Building AI for India team. Okay, so these are the 5 participants. We like the post very much, and this is the huge shout out to Nancy, Aryan, Kartike, and Kamil, and there's another guy. Sorry, I am able to miss. So you shout out for everyone who made the progress out here and sharing
Ashwin,
the
Ashwin,
social media.
Ashwin. That
Ashwin, right?
guy.
Yeah. So yeah, I would be waiting for this session as well. Next session to post, and we will sharing the Google form as well for the daily check-in. Okay, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, and guys, like we today shared FAQ assistant, so hope that answering very well. And like if you guys are not satisfied with the answers that FAQ assistant are giving to you, we will drop also a form today. So we will take like at the end of the session by tomorrow. Okay, Aaron?
Yeah. If anybody has any question or something, so they can ask right now. We're just 2 minutes more.
Yeah. Okay, so there is no questions coming from the participant. You can just wrap up the session. Thank you guys.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
guys for joining, and we'll see you tomorrow in day 3. Okay. We have an idea. All I become different. Yes, how I can become different. So you have to become different every day by executing right steps at the right time. So first of all,
And
share
attend
this.
and attending all these sessions that is happening, because all these sessions will help you a lot. So yeah.
Yeah. So see you, Kamil, tomorrow, and sir, if we can submit anything today about the project. Yeah, we'll be sharing
Yeah.
the Google form about your progress, how does happening in your project site. Uh, please fill that, and if you do have any questions, so put over the group so that we can make things there. Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a nice day.
Bye, guys. Take care.